April 5, 1945. The rain hammered the windows of Combined Fleet Headquarters in Hoshi like machine gun fire. Inside, Admiral Somu Toyoda's staff officers stood rigid around the operations table, staring at the dispatch from Imperial General Headquarters. The words were plain, brutal, final: Operation Tengo. The Surface Special Attack Force would sortie for Okinawa. Objective: beach the battleship Yamato and fight to the last shell as a stationary fortress. Vice Admiral Ryanosuke Kusaka set his teacup down with a click that cut the silence. 1 battleship. 1 light cruiser. 8 destroyers. Against the entire U.S. Fifth Fleet. Names like USS Bunker Hill, USS Enterprise, USS Essex rolled through their minds like thunder. What none of them yet realized was that this suicide run would draw the single most devastating carrier air strike ever launched against a surface warship in history. The Pacific had already taught hard lessons. Battleships were no longer queens of the sea. They were targets. Sink Yamato, and the Imperial Japanese Navy's last claim to greatness would vanish beneath the waves. The once mighty Second Fleet had been whittled to a ghost. Only Yamato remained operational. Her sister Musashi lay at the bottom of the sea beyond sea, victim of 19 torpedoes and 17 bombs 6 months earlier. The carrier Shinano, hastily converted from a battleship hull, had survived just 10 days after commissioning before American submarines punched her ticket. Yamato alone carried the burden of imperial pride, 72, 800 tons of steel and fury, her 9 18.1-inch guns capable of hurling 3 200-pound shells 26 miles. But guns meant nothing without air cover, and Japan had none to give. 1,000 miles south, Task Force 58 sliced through heavy Pacific swells at 25 knots. Vice Admiral Mark A. Mitchell stood on Bunker Hill's flag bridge, eyes narrowed behind binoculars, intelligence folders stacked beside him. His command boasted 386 aircraft across 11 fleet carriers and 6 light carriers, F-6F Hellcats to sweep the skies, SB-2C Helldivers to plunge like hawks, TBF Avengers carrying the refined Mark 13 torpedo, dropped at 260 knots from 800 feet, packing 600 pounds of torpex that could rip a hull wide open. American pilots had perfected the art of one-sided attacks, hammering the same side until counter-flooding became impossible. Commander James D. Ramage, Air Group skipper aboard Enterprise, knew Yamato's armor layout by heart. Born on an Iowa farm, aeronautical engineering degree from Purdue, he understood that sinking the monster demanded precision, torpedoes below the belt, bombs to silence the flak guns, overwhelming numbers to saturate defenses. Aboard Yamato, Captain Kosaku Aruga read the orders for the 10th time, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. On April 6th, she would take on 400 tons of fuel at Tokuyama Depot. Depot crews, in quiet rebellion against the one-way mandate, pumped in 60% of capacity instead of the authorized 40. Enough, in theory, for a round trip at economical speed. In combat, it would vanish before the first enemy plane appeared. Aruga had commanded destroyers at Midway, watched Akagi and Kaga burn under American dive bombers. He knew what awaited a battleship without fighters overhead. Still, duty was duty. American carriers split into 3 task groups, converging like wolves. Task Group 58.1 to the north, 58.3 to the east, 58.4 racing from refueling. Radar operators hunched over glowing screens, sifting real contacts from rain clutter. Aircraft Coordinator Lieutenant Commander Joseph Taylor orchestrated the aerial symphony. Launch cycles every 90 minutes, combat air patrols stacked at 3 altitudes, strike packages forming at grid coordinates. Weather closed in, cloud base at 3,000 feet, visibility swinging between 2 and 10 miles in squalls. April 6, 15:20 hours. Yamato led the 10-ship task force out of Tokuyama Harbor, light cruiser Yahagi in the van, destroyers screening, the super battleship bringing up the rear like a condemned queen. Emperor Hirohito had asked, "But what of the Navy? What are they doing for Okinawa?" This was the answer, a gesture everyone understood was doomed. Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito, commanding from Yamato's bridge, had initially refused. Only the Emperor's expectation forced compliance. As the force threaded the Bungo Strait between Kyushu and Shikoku, 2 American submarines waited in ambush. USS Threadfin Commander John J. Foote picked up the formation at 17:45, 10 contacts, 22 knots, course 240. Foote surfaced long enough to transmit in clear speed over security. USS Hackleback took the handoff, shadowing through the night, sending 4 position reports while Japanese destroyers hunted fruitlessly. Dawn on the 7th brought worse weather, clouds at 1,500 feet, visibility 5 miles and driving rain. 6 fighters from Kanoya appeared at 0600, orbiting uselessly above the overcast for 4 hours before departing. Admiral Spruance readied his battleships for surface action, 6 modern fast battleships with radar-directed 16-inch guns. But Mitcher had no intention of letting steel slug it out with steel. At 0800, without waiting for approval, he launched. The strike was colossal: 132 fighters, 50 dive bombers, 98 torpedo planes from 11 carriers. PBM Mariner flying boats circled just beyond gun range, relaying real-time positions. At 12:20, Yamato's lookouts spotted the first wave, black specks swelling into dive bombers and torpedo planes. At 12:32, Yamato's main battery roared, firing 3 200-pound Sanshiki anti-aircraft shells that burst in glittering clouds of incendiaries. Pilots simply changed altitude and pressed on. The giant guns could manage 1 round per minute. American aircraft attacked every few seconds. 12:35, first torpedo, port side aft. A geyser 100 feet high. 2 minutes later, another midships. A 1,000-pound bomb smashed the deck near the aft turret, igniting fires that would burn until the end. Damage control parties counter-flooded starboard, but hits arrived faster than pumps could respond. At 12:30, lagging destroyer Asashimo took multiple strikes from USS San Jacinto's air group and vanished with all 326 hands. Hamikase lost her bridge to a direct bomb, 242 men gone. Yahagi absorbed torpedoes and bombs from 3 carriers, left burning and dead in the water. By 1300, Yamato had 5 torpedoes in her port side, listing 15 degrees, speed down to 18 knots. The second wave, another 100 aircraft, closed in. Torpedo divisions attacked from 3 bearings, all port side. 1342, 3 more hits. List 20 degrees. Counter-flooding exhausted. Ito cancelled the mission at 1350, hoisted signals to rescue survivors. Radio silence, antennas shredded. Visual flags lost in smoke. Aruga ordered abandoned ship at 1402, list already 30 degrees. Men slid down decks into the sea. The Emperor's portrait was passed to a junior officer with orders to live. Executive Officer Captain Jiro Nomura begged Aruga to leave. The captain lashed himself to the binnacle. Ito retired to his sea cabin, refusing all pleas. 1407, a lone torpedo struck starboard, irrelevant now. List 35 degrees. Turrets tore from mountings. 1414, 90 degrees. Yamato rolled, still making way. 1417, forward magazines detonated. A mushroom cloud punched 20,000 feet through the overcast, visible 100 miles away in Kagoshima. The shock wave staggered aircraft overhead. When the smoke cleared, Yamato was gone. Only oil and wreckage. Of 332 crew, 276 survived. Ito, Aruga, most senior officers chose the ship. Destroyers Yukikase and Futsuki rescued who they could under renewed air attacks, tossing scramble nets and rafts. Kasumi, bowless, was scuttled. Isokase, burning, followed. Yahagi sank at 1405. Final count, 6 of 10 ships lost, for 137 Japanese sailors dead. American losses, 10 planes, 12 aviators. In 2 hours, carrier aviation accomplished what surface fleets could not. Task Force 58 demonstrated the pinnacle of American naval power: multi-carrier coordination, one-sided torpedo concentration, tactical precision honed across 3 years of war. Code breakers had read the sortie orders before some Japanese captains. Submarines vectored the hunters. American pilots flew 300 hours before combat, their Japanese counterparts, 100. Squadrons rotated home to train replacements. Japanese fought until annihilated. Yamato was more than steel, she was Japan's soul, named for the ancient heartland. Her loss shattered morale. Admiral Toyota later wrote that Tengo ended the Imperial Navy as a fighting force. Okinawa received no relief. American casualties there topped 50,000, but invasion of the home islands loomed with projected million-plus U.S. dead. 4 months later, atomic bombs fell partly because Yamato's sacrifice signaled Japan's willingness to bleed without limit. The wreck was found in 1985, broken in 100 feet of water, chrysanthemum crest still proud on the upright bow. Veterans met that year, Japanese survivors and American pilots. Mutual respect replaced hatred. The Kure Museum draws thousands yearly, reminding all of war's price. Yamato's 1,000 tons of remaining fuel oil seeps slowly, a war grave protected by treaty. The battle rewrote naval doctrine worldwide. Battleships were obsolete. Air power ruled. Pride could not defy physics. In the East China Sea, Yamato's guns are silent, her crew entombed. The lesson endures. Technology sets limits, courage cannot repeal them, and refusing reality costs lives. Operation Tengo failed its mission but succeeded in one grim way. It showed the world, in fire and blood, the folly of fighting tomorrow's war with yesterday's weapons. That truth, paid for by 137 Japanese sailors and 12 Americans, remains Yamato's final, tragic gift to history.